Now, on our exclusive interview with the partner of detained Australian journalist Cheng Lei. He spoke, Nick Coyle, for the first time yesterday, revealing to Sky News that Cheng Lei's monthly consular visits have stopped. Joining me live is the spokesperson for the Alliance for Journalist Freedom, Peter Greste. Peter, great to talk to you. Unfortunately, when we talk to you, it often signals that somewhere around the world an Australian is in trouble, and that is absolutely the case with Cheng Lei. She has been detained for more than 2 years now. How concerning is this recent development that we learned about yesterday, about essentially no visits, even virtual ones?
Look, this is very concerning. As you said, that even virtual visits, banning even virtual visits is a problem. The Chinese have said, of course, that they've stopped the visits because of COVID issues. They're concerned about spreading COVID in prison. But as you mentioned, there are all sorts of other alternatives. You could get consular visitors, consular folks tested beforehand with a rat test. You could do all sorts of alternatives like virtual visits and so on. So it's hard to see that this is a way that this is all about simply just about COVID. It seems to be an excuse to put more pressure on Cheng Lei and more pressure on the Australian authorities. In the absence of any kind of credible alternative, it's hard to see it as anything other than that.
Yeah, indeed. Now, we've had a change of government. There's been some, it seems, early wins from Penny Wong on the diplomatic front. Does that give you any hope?
I think it does. I mean, we've been getting signals from China that they're interested in what they call a reset of relations between the two countries. And I think that if they're serious about it, then releasing Cheng Lei, convicting her perhaps and sentencing her to time served would be a way of demonstrating that they are interested in a reset without actually giving too much away. At the same time, we're seeing this kind of weird dance, a diplomatic dance of the two foreign ministers around the Asia-Pacific region as they're trying to kind of shore up support from those countries. And I think that there's a kind of weird coincidence between increasing pressure in the Asia-Pacific, but also an interest in taking the opportunity of a new government to reset the relations. It's hard to see how this is going to play out. But I do think that if the Chinese are serious about demonstrating both compassion and an interest in re-establishing relations, but also in their seriousness around justice and fairness, then they will release Cheng Lei.
I mean, I would describe her detention as, you know, perhaps politically motivated, but, you know, that can't be proven, of course. When you look at the strategy when it comes to cases like hers, Peter, sorry, I'll just finish this and we'll elaborate. You know, there's often two strategies. You can do things quietly, but after a while you do things quite loudly and publicly. What is your view on those two strategies and how they work?
Well, OK, let's just backtrack a little bit. You said that Cheng Lei's innocence can't be proven. I mean, the Chinese have the capacity to prove this. They have the capacity to be very clear and transparent about why she's in prison. They haven't been so far. No one was allowed from the outside, externally. No diplomatic representatives were allowed in court for her trial. So we really don't know what the evidence is. Now, the Chinese are saying that she's in prison on national security grounds. They've simply said that it's related to supplying state secrets abroad, but we have no further detail about who she's supposed to be supplying it to or what state secrets might have been involved. So there is complete opacity around this. And I think if China wants to be taken seriously, if they want their judicial system to be respected, then they will reveal more information about this. When it comes to public diplomacy, the instinct of our diplomats, the instinct of DFAT and our foreign minister up until now has been to use what they call quiet diplomacy, to allow the diplomats to speak to one another without, away from the glare of publicity. Frankly, my experience, the experience of others like Kylie Moore-Gilbert, has always been that quiet diplomacy doesn't really get you very far. that there is need for public diplomacy, for public noise, to raise the political temperature, to make sure that this is a priority for both governments. And one of the things that we came to the conclusion in my case, and my family felt this when I was in Egypt, was that the Egyptian authorities were capable of making a distinction between the public noise and the private communications. What was the value of the public noise was, as I said, that it raised pressure, it kept attention on these issues, and it made it a lot easier for the diplomats to engage in fruitful negotiations.
Do you think that is true of China as well? Obviously, Egypt and Iran different culturally. China, in terms of our relationship with them now, the geographical proximity, the reliance that we have on them economically, does that change the dynamics at all?
Laura, each case is different, and yes, there are different diplomatic and political circumstances. We can't say that what applied in one case necessarily works, is always going to work in every other case. But I do think that, generally speaking, public noise, public pressure does help the situation. As I think Nick Coyle has already said, the fact is we've seen almost 2 years of quiet diplomacy with no result. Cheng Lei is still in prison, but not only that, it seems that her conditions of her detention are deteriorating and her health is at serious risk. So, you know, to quote a couple of famous philosophers, the height of madness is to continue doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. We need to find a different strategy, and it seems to me that now is perhaps the right time to start speaking a little bit more forcefully about this. Yeah,
it sounds like it. How are you, by the way, Peter? When you talk about these kinds of stories, are they triggering?
It's a good question, Laura. It is triggering in that I get quite concerned and upset and worked up about it. I don't feel damaged by my time in Egypt. I just empathise very strongly with Cheng Lei and others that are in her situation. You know, I know and understand how traumatising it is to be stuck in a cell, and I also know and understand how important those consular visits, those communications with the outside world really are to your mental health, to your physical health, for all sorts of reasons. And so, you know, I'd much rather be speaking about this and using my experience as a way of talking about these issues, raising them in people's consciousnesses, rather than simply burying it and not getting involved.
You're a good man, Peter Greste. Great to talk to you. We'll speak soon.
Thanks very much, Laura.